public defender is an attorney employed by the community and responsible for giving legal aid without cost to any person who seeks it and is financially unable to employ private counsel. It is his duty to defend those accused of crime until the issue is decided in a court of law. The first public defender's office in the United States was opened in January 1913. Over the years, other offices were opened. And today, that handful has grown to a network of lawyers cooperating to protect the rights of our clients. The case you're about to see started out as a 3-line news item on page 16 of the largest newspaper in the city and ended up with headlines on page 1.
I didn't do anything?
Sure, just like you didn't do anything a couple of years ago. How about this?
I bought that watch yesterday.
Why aren't you wearing it? It's a wristwatch.
I bought it for a present for a friend.
Come along, Foley. You'll get your chance to tell the judge about it.
Please, let me
go.
I didn't do anything.
Get in.
What were you doing at that jewelry counter, Ray?
I was looking at a watch. There was a sale on and I needed one.
Lieutenant Hanson reports that he saw you pocket a watch.
That's not true. I had enough money to buy one. I was going to buy one. Then I saw Hanson, and I remember what he did to me last time.
What about that signed confession, Ray? The district attorney will introduce that as evidence.
I had to sign that, Mr. Matthews. Hanson beat me until I did. Look here and here. Hanson's fist did that. He cuffed me all around that room till I couldn't see. I didn't know what I was doing. He wouldn't let me go until I signed it.
Or wasn't there another officer present during the questioning?
For a while, then he went out for some coffee. I saw Hanson give that other detective the high sign. He wanted him to leave so he could be alone with me, so he could make me confess.
I'll see what I can do, Ray.
Believe me, Mr. Matthews, I didn't try to steal anything. Get me a trial soon. Let the judge and jury see what Hanson did to me. That confession doesn't mean a thing.
There were several puzzling factors about the Foley case, but my only concern was to defend my client against the charges that were brought against him. Oh, Ed, what's on your mind?
Read my paper today?
Oh, I haven't had time.
Read that building fraud article. We've got those contractors dead to rights.
Yeah, nice work, Ed. I'll have to read it later. I got too much on my mind now.
Like, Ray Foley?
Like Foley and about a dozen others. What's your interest in Foley?
He sneaked this letter out with a prisoner who was released last night. The editor got it this morning. It's big news, Bart. Police brutality has no place on the American scene. The boss wants to splash it front page. Let's work on it together.
I don't like this any more than you do, Ed. If it's true.
It's true, all right. The police department has rights, but they don't include beating confessions out of prisoners. Now, let's cooperate on this, and we can bring that strong-arm stuff right out into the open and have a few guys like Hanson fired off the force.
My job is to defend Foley, not to prosecute a member of the police department for alleged brutality.
Alleged? I just saw that kid. Hanson beat that confession out of him.
Possibly. But it's my client's word against Hanson's.
Don't be naive. Foley isn't the first one to be forced into signing a confession. The DA will dangle it in front of the jury, and that poor kid will be sent to the joint for 10 years.
If Foley is innocent of that shoplifting charge and he was coerced into signing that confession, he'll go free.
How?
By getting the proof.
Well, that's why I'm here, Bart. Now, we can work together on this. The newspaper will give us all the help we need.
I don't like this, Williams. I don't want you to make any unsubstantiated charges. I've always worked with the police department, and I intend to maintain a good relationship. This would kill it.
A good relationship with a bunch of sadists.
Not a bunch, a few rare exceptions. No, Ed, I'm not going to work with you.
I'm not going to let you use the public defender's office to sell your newspapers.
Okay, I'll do it myself. Take a look at the front page tomorrow.
Hold it, Ed.
Now, my advice is to be careful. There are laws that protect citizens, even policemen, from slander and libel. Now, this front page could cost your newspaper a lot of money. I understand legal fees come pretty high outside of the public defender's office.
I'll take my chances.
My next move was to investigate Foley's charges of a coerced confession.
That's all. Now, Mr. Matthews. Foley. Here it is. I mugged him at 8:15 that night.
How long did it take?
Oh, just a few minutes.
I had a copy made from the file. This the one you took?
Looks like it.
There were no cuts or lacerations on his face?
Camera doesn't lie. That's the way he looked when he walked in here.
Uh-huh. And where would he go after he left here?
Up to the 3rd floor to get dressed in.
Thanks.
Oh, wait a minute. Lieutenant Hanson was waiting for him. I think he took him to his office for questioning.
Thanks.
Next man. Wipe that smile off your face.
I took Foley in at 9:50.
Now, let's see. That would mean he was in with Lieutenant Hanson for an hour and a half.
Well, I wouldn't know about that. I sent him up here. I put him away.
Now, what was Foley's condition when you took him into the cell?
Condition? He looked sober to me.
No, I mean his face. Was it cut, bleeding?
Why all the questions?
Well, it's Foley's contention that Hanson forced him into signing a confession, used his fist to get it. Now, how was Foley's face when you took him into that cell?
I didn't notice. It was dark. I just took him back to Tank 3 Easy and locked him up. Why don't you ask the lieutenant?
Now, Foley said that he asked for hospital care.
That's right.
And what time was that?
11:10. I sent a trustee up with him.
Well, did you happen to notice how his face looked when he came out of the cell?
I didn't notice.
Oh, thanks. Thanks very much.
Yes, sir, I remember Foley. I took care of him.
What was his condition?
Very badly beaten up. Cuts, bruises.
Well, what would you say was the cause of the wounds?
Apparently a fight.
What about his hands? Were there any knuckle bruises, as if he had fought back?
No, I don't think so. There's no indication of it here.
Well, thank you, nurse. You've been very helpful.
You're welcome.
They took you to the tank at 9:50. The jailer has no recollection that your face was marked.
He wouldn't. He's a cop. They're all alike. They stick together.
Now, why did you wait until after 11 o'clock before asking for hospital treatment?
Well, I thought the bleeding would stop, but it didn't. It began to hurt, and I couldn't sleep.
Uh-huh. Now, 2 years ago, you were arrested by Hanson for stealing a car. How did you plead? Guilty?
Yeah. I was running around with a couple of fellows. I didn't know any better. But I haven't done anything like that since. Up until a couple of weeks ago, I've been working at the factory. I got laid off, but they promised to call me back.
And how did Hanson treat you at the time of that arrest?
Rough. He pushed me around plenty. He didn't have to. I told him I was guilty, but that didn't stop him.
Now, there were 3 men in that cell when you came in. They could witness the fact that you were cut and bleeding. If we could find them, but they've all been released. Transients.
Well, what do you want them for? Get me a trial soon. Let the judge and jury see what Hanson did to me. One look at me and they'd know he forced me to sign that confession.
I'd rather have the proof. I'll talk to you again, Ray. Excuse me, Lieutenant Hanson?
That's me.
Public Defender's Office.
What can I do for you?
Well, I'd like to talk to you alone, if you don't mind.
Sure. Come back a little later, Pete. We'll go over the rest of it then. What's on your mind?
I'm representing Ray Foley.
You've got nothing to represent. I caught him cold.
Do you mind telling me about it?
Foley stole a watch in a department store. I followed him outside. I arrested him.
The watch was in his possession?
It was. It's all in the report.
He signed a confession.
Well, Foley says that confession was obtained by force.
Foley's a liar. I didn't touch him.
Well, an hour and a half is a little long to question a prisoner, isn't it?
Some of them we questioned for days. I just sat there and looked at Foley until he spilled.
Are you sure, Hanson? You sure you didn't beat him up while you were looking?
Move along, Williams. I'm busy.
My newspaper is interested in the Foley case. His story of the confession and yours seem to differ a little.
I don't have to tell you anything, Williams.
Maybe you'd better go, Ed. I'd like to discuss this with the lieutenant alone.
The public's got a right to know what's going on. We got a letter from Foley stating that you darn near tore his head off getting that confession. What have you got to say about it?
I say the kid's nuts.
That's no explanation. What did you use? Your hands, a bat, a rubber hose?
All right, let's take it easy. No reason to lose our tempers.
Get him out of here, Matthews.
You don't scare me, Hanson. I'm not behind the bars. You're not clubbing a confession out of me.
I'm warning you.
Just because you've got a badge doesn't give you the right to slap people around, even if they are criminals.
I didn't slap anybody around. I tell you, the kid's lying.
I don't believe you. Neither does anybody down at the newspaper. We think that you muscleheads ought to be blown right out of the department. And I'm lighting a fuse under you right now. And we're not going to stop until you and every cop like you is off the city payroll.
Sorry about the interruption. There were a few more questions I wanted to ask you.
I'm busy, Matthews. Ask your questions in court and you'll get your answers.
The next morning, it was front page news. Police brutality charged. Foley tells story of his confession. I tried to reason with Williams, but he wouldn't listen. I tried to call you at the station a little while ago.
I hope you're satisfied. You and that pal of yours sure fixed up everything fine.
Well, I had nothing to do with this.
Oh, you kidding. You and your public defender's office. We got a confession out of that guy. Now, what are you trying to do?
Oh, hold on.
You hold on. Confession by brutality. I told you I didn't touch that kid, and I didn't. I wouldn't dirty my hands. You're the guy who asked for police cooperation, and this is the sort of treatment we get. I was out when you called, Mr. Defender, because I was standing on the commissioner's carpet. You might be happy to know that he suspended me until a police board can review the case. Prove that police brutality, Matthews. I might be suspended, but I still can testify. Foley's going to jail, understand? And I hope he gets the book thrown at him.
Well, the lieutenant seems to be perturbed.
He has reason to be. He was just suspended.
That's great. A few more days of that, and we'll have the mayor and the council demanding a full-scale investigation of the entire dirty mess.
Now, as far as I'm concerned, Ed, this story is nothing but rank sensationalism. You had no evidence, no justification, whatever, for publishing it.
I'm not worried. The story is the truth.
Is it? How can you be sure Hanson did touch him? Where's your proof?
I got plenty. I got Foley's letter.
Forget the letter. That's only Hanson's word against Foley's. I don't want to see Hanson or anyone else crucified unless I know that he's guilty. I've got to have proof that Foley was beaten up before he entered that cell.
We know how he looked when he was mugged. We know how he looked a couple of hours later. What else do you need?
I've got to have witnesses that saw Foley right after he came out of Hanson's office. If
only I could locate one of the prisoners that was in the cell when he came in.
A waste of time. We've got this guy Hanson cold.
And I say that we haven't. I have to have a witness. I might have gone to the police and asked for their cooperation, but you ruined all of that by blasting that story.
All I know, nobody is charging us with libel or slander. You know why? Because that story is the truth. That boy was beaten. That confession was beaten right out of him. And you want to know something else? I'm going to keep that story going until Hanson and all the other mugs like him are kicked right out of the police department.
There was no arguing with Williams. His mind was made up. I still had my job to do, to find that witness. 3 bits of humanity, any one of which could corroborate Foley's charges of brutality. I found the wife of one of those men. She hadn't seen her husband since he left jail. Apparently, she had no desire to see him again. The mother of the second one didn't know her son's whereabouts either. She hadn't seen him for weeks. She probably wouldn't see him again unless he needed money. There was absolutely no trace of Harry Adams, the third one. I was just about ready to give up. Hello. Yes, this is Matthews. Who?
You heard me, Hanson. I understand you're looking for a few witnesses. I found one, in case you're interested.
Well, where are you? I'll be right over. Where is he?
In the booth?
Well, I didn't know you were helping us, Hanson. Thanks.
Not you, Matthews. I'm helping myself.
You didn't talk to him.
I didn't push him around, if that's what you mean. This is Harry Adams in the natural state. I knew he was a boozer, so I covered every joint in town.
Hey, Adams. Adams.
It won't work. He's boiled. He must have had a gallon.
Is there a steam bath around here?
A couple of blocks north.
Now, let's get him on his feet and see if we can get him sobered up, pal. Adams had a bender to end all benders. It took 3 hours to steam the alcohol out of him. Sit down, Harry. Make yourself comfortable.
I don't know what you fellas want with me. I ain't done anything wrong. Say, I've seen you before. You're a cop. Honest, I ain't done anything wrong.
I know you haven't, Harry. I just wanted to ask you a few questions.
But I don't know anything. I can't help you. You know, I can't help myself sometimes.
Do you know Ray Foley?
Foley?
Now, there's nothing to be frightened about, Pop. Foley was one of the prisoners in your cell at the county jail. He was admitted the night before you were released.
Well, I remember a couple of fellas. Saunders and Billings. Yeah, his name is, was there another one?
I'll try to remember, Harry. He came in the night before you were released, about 10 o'clock.
Here's his picture. Take a look at it.
Yeah, he does look familiar. Maybe I know him if I saw him. You see, I don't want to get anybody into trouble. I just want to be left alone.
I was hoping you could get somebody out of trouble, Harry.
Out of trouble?
Who are you calling?
The attorney room. We'll get Foley down and see if Adams can't make an identification.
Yeah, an identification. Yeah. This is the first visiting room I was ever in. As a visitor, folks usually visited me.
Sit down, Pop. Head of the table for you.
What are you doing here?
Well, the boys told me you were holding a little conference with Foley. Mind if I sit in?
I sure do.
It's all right, Lieutenant. He might as well know what's going on.
They said you wanted to talk to me. Said it was important.
That's right, Ray. Sit down. Look him over carefully, Adams. Is he the man who was admitted to your cell about 10 o'clock that night?
Who, him?
Go ahead, answer the question.
Oh, yeah, sure, that's him.
It was around 10 o'clock.
Well, I wouldn't be sure about the time. You see, the other fellows and me, we were just gabbing a little bit.
And when he came through the door, could you see him clearly?
Oh, sure. Why not?
Well, it must have been pretty dark.
Well, you get to see pretty good in the dark when you're in jail a while.
Now, tell me, Adams, how did Foley look? His face, I mean. Was he cut and bleeding?
No. There was nothing wrong with his face.
Are you sure?
Sure, I'm sure.
He doesn't know what he's talking about. Hanson had just beat me up. I just left him.
Shut up, Foley, you're lying.
I'm not. I was cut, bleeding. Ask the nurse at the hospital. She'll tell you how bad off I was.
Hold it, Foley. Let Adams do the talking. You remember Foley coming in?
Oh, I heard him coming down the hall with the jailer. I didn't know he was coming in with us until he stopped in front of the cell. You know, you can hear everything in jail. And like I said, you can see pretty good sometimes, too.
All right, young fella, you got the upper berth. Climb in and try to get some sleep. Remember, we like it quiet around here.
Quiet, he says. And he's whistling all night. Old songs. Nothing but old songs. What are you in for?
Jaywalking.
A wise guy, huh?
Anybody got a cigarette?
Why don't you buy your own?
With what?
Money.
They took it all away from me when they booked me.
Don't you know the regulations? Everybody's allowed to keep a couple of bucks a week for cigarettes and candy.
I didn't know that.
Who you kidding? You know the score. You've been in before.
I kind of sympathized with him. I mean you. You know, you can get a lot of guys in the cell, but once you're inside, you're alone. Well, after Foley got undressed, the other fellas and me, we just sat around and gabbed a little, and then we went to sleep. About a half hour or an hour after, I felt something touch my arm, and I woke up. I thought maybe Foley wanted a drink of water. He started going through my clothes. Hey, what are you doing?
Nothing at all.
You sure? He just took something out of my pocket.
What's the matter, Pop?
What did he do? He's crazy. He said I took something.
Are you sure, mister?
Just looking for smoke.
I had some money, and it's gone. And he took it.
I didn't. I swear I didn't.
Over your fist.
Ow!
Your fist, I tell you, will you?
I told you he took it.
I was broke. I thought I could get the jailer to buy me back. I was going to pay him back. Honest, I was.
Stealing's all right on the outside, but not in here. You got a lot to learn, fella. You might as well learn it right now.
I didn't try to stop him. He had to learn. You know, it's a funny world in jail. A lot of crooks and no good living together. They don't have much, but what they got, you can't steal.
You're not going to believe him. He's nothing but a drunk.
Oh, I wasn't drunk that night, Foley. After 30 days in the tank, I was cold sober.
He's lying. He's lying. Can't you see he's lying? Hanson told him to say that. He's trying to frame me.
I'm sorry, Foley. I believe him.
Well, you can't. I'm telling you the truth. It's a frame-up. Williams, you read my letter. You published it. You believe me.
I don't know how to say this, Lieutenant. I made a mistake. A bad one. I apologize. I'll print a retraction tomorrow.
You're the public defender. You're my lawyer. You can't believe a skid row bummer. He's the biggest liar in 17 counties.
No, Foley, you are. And I'm going to have to plead you guilty.
But Hanson gets you, too. You're crooks. All of you. Nothing but crooks. This is a frame-up. A frame-up.
Well, Well, Lieutenant, it's easy to see what happened. After the boys roughed him up, he figured out a way to twist it to his own advantage. He wrote the letter to the paper and blamed you for the beating. He lied to everyone. He even lied to his own lawyer.
I'd appreciate it if you'd tell that to the police board.
First thing tomorrow morning.
Sorry I shot off my mouth. I guess we all need public defenders, even police officers.
I'm glad you see our side. Come up, Hup. Let's go home. You've had a big night.
Oh, how about a little drink?
Yeah, sure. Coffee. Lieutenant Hanson was reinstated and is now back on the job. Ray Foley was sentenced to from 1 to 10 years. But the judge felt that Foley's malicious lying was an indication of instability and recommended psychiatric care while he was serving out his time. The case you have just seen was brought to a fair and just conclusion through the efforts of a public defender. Tonight, Philip Morris salutes public defender Ellery E. Cuff, Los Angeles County, Los Angeles, California, and his staff for outstanding achievement in the cause of justice. A public defender is an attorney employed by the community and responsible for giving legal aid without cost to any person who seeks it and is financially unable to employ private counsel. It is his duty to defend those accused of crime until the issue is decided in a court of law. The first public defender's office in the United States was opened in January 1913. Over the years, other offices were opened. And today, that handful has grown to a network of lawyers cooperating to protect the rights of our clients. Files of the public defender, we bring you the case of the forger. Our faith in human nature is often put to the acid test. My job and I were put to such a test in the case of the People versus William Evans. Bill and Madge Evans were the kind of young couple you and I would like to have for neighbors. Happily married, friendly, and helpful, they were well thought of in the community. Bill had a steady job with a good future, assistant to the manager of a flourishing construction firm. You'd never think of Bill as the kind of man capable of committing a felony.
How you doing, hon?
Terrible. Whenever the first of the month comes around with all those bills, I want to run somewhere and hide.
If you don't learn to stick to a budget, you may have to. Say, honey, there's a good show around the corner. How about it?
That Western you're talking about, you can count me out.
Oh, come on, baby. Be a good sport. Buy you some popcorn.
No sale. When we got married, you promised I wouldn't have to watch Westerns or wrestling matches.
And you promised to love, honor, and obey.
Love and honor I do, but obey was stricken from the marriage ceremony. Why don't you go alone?
You trust me out alone at night?
When I stop trusting you, I'll stop being your wife. I'll tell you what, you find a good love story and I'll go with you.
I know a pretty good love story right here. You know something? After 5 years of this, I consider myself a pretty fortunate guy. You cook well, you're fairly bright, and you're even pretty.
But I can't count. Oh, Bill, I give up. I can't make these figures balance.
You never could. Honey, you wanted to take care of the money. Well, you've been doing it for 3 months now. Don't you think it's time I took over again?
Well, if you think so.
I know so. Do you realize we overdrawn the other day?
But I can't.
We have a joint checking account, remember?
You mean I wrote too many checks?
That's what the bank tells me.
Bill, I'm sorry, but it won't happen again. Promise.
We'll skip it now. You expecting somebody?
No.
I'll get it.
Mr. Evans?
Yeah, I'm Bill Evans.
Sergeant Riker, Police Department.
What can I do for you?
You'll have to come downtown with me to headquarters.
Tonight?
I'm afraid so, ma'am.
Well, what for?
You'll find out when you get there.
But...
Ready? Let's go.
I'll go with you.
No, look. I haven't shot anybody for a week now. I won't be long. Sergeant? So long, Ed.
Recognize this check, Mr. Evans?
Sure, that's for a suit I bought downtown.
Then that's your signature.
Of course. What's this check doing here?
The store turned it over to us.
What for?
Passing bad checks, Mr. Evans, is a felony.
Oh, look, this is ridiculous. That check was good when I wrote it.
That's not what the bank said.
All right, so I was overdrawn. When I bought the suit, the check was covered, but that was a month ago. For some reason, they didn't put it through, and when they did the other day, I was short. I'll straighten it out right now.
I'm afraid that's not the point.
Well, look here, Sergeant. These things do happen, you know. My wife and I, we have a joint account. She's poor at figures. Forgets to keep track.
This check look familiar to you?
Never saw it before in my life.
How about this one?
No.
Recognize any of them?
No, why should I? They're all signed by people I never heard of.
The signatures are very similar to yours.
What do you mean?
We have reason to believe that these checks were written by the same person, and that you're that person.
What is this? Some kind of a joke?
Police don't joke, Evans. I'll have to hold you for further questioning.
On what grounds?
Forgery and passing bad checks.
Wait a minute. This is some kind of a crazy mistake. I don't have anything to do with this. I've got a good job. I've got no reason to do anything like this.
You'll have your chance to explain. Come along.
Wait, look. Can't I call my wife? She'll be worried.
Right, go ahead.
He assured her that there was nothing to worry about, that he'd be home in no time. Then Bill Evans was taken to the main jail where he was booked, fingerprinted, and lodged in his cell. Madge did worry. The next morning, she called my office and asked me to see Bill. I agreed to help him all I could.
I appreciate your interest, Mr. Matthews, but I think you're making too much of all this. I really don't need a lawyer.
Forgery's a serious charge.
I haven't been charged with it yet. The whole thing is such an obvious mistake, they're bound to find out. I'm not worried. I'm innocent.
The evidence looks pretty conclusive.
Conclusive of what? Look, Mr. Matthews, I'm just getting a good start in life. I've got a wonderful wife, a fine job. I've been with the same company for 3 years. I'm in line for a good promotion. I'm secretary of the Builders Club. Now, does this look like the picture of a criminal, a forger?
No, not so far.
Well, that's all there is to Bill Evans, just an average guy leading an average life. The only crime I ever committed was not to save any money. Well, how can you these days with the high cost of living?
That's a good question.
Weren't you ever short in your life?
Could be.
Well, you didn't go to jail for it, did you?
No, but I kept a keen eye on my bank balance.
I explained all that. That was an oversight.
Well, I hope someone can explain those checks for your sake. I'll be seeing you, Evans.
I doubt it, but, well, thanks for dropping by anyway. Well, Mr. Matthews.
Yes?
What's the next step? I mean, what's the procedure in a case like this?
Well, you'll be confronted with the defrauded parties to see if they can identify you.
Who can identify me if they've never seen me?
You'll all speak quietly. Any of these men look familiar to you?
Not to me.
How about that one, the one over there?
Man on the left, step forward. Walk across the stage. Hold it. Turn to the right. To the left.
That ain't him. He had a different kind of nose.
Step back in line.
That could be the one. He's got that honest look. The kind that fooled you.
Second from the right. Second from the right, come forward. Get a move on. Your name?
William Evans.
Where were you born?
Dayton, Ohio.
Speak in your natural voice. What do you work for?
J.H. Nichols. I'm assistant to the manager.
It sounds like him.
Yeah. Know something? When he passed that bum check, he had the nerve even to argue about the price.
I think that's your man.
What makes you so sure?
Well, he looks like him, he walks like him, and he acts just as cocky.
Any of the rest of you recognize him? What about you?
Well, I don't know. Guy who came to me wore a hat.
Get him a hat. Put it on.
Could be. I think that's him.
That's him, all right. The hat does it. I'm sure of it.
I told you he's the guy. Knew it all the time.
That's not true.
Okay, mark him. He's been made.
That's a lie. I tell you, I haven't done anything. I'm innocent. What do you want from me? I'm innocent.
Well, that's that.
Thanks, folks. You'll be hearing from us.
How many years will he get?
First, he has to be tried, ma'am. And if he's found guilty, he can get up to 14 years.
Good. Any man that steals from a poor, defenseless woman deserves all of that.
Day Evans was arraigned and a complaint was issued. The charge, forgery and passing a check without sufficient funds, each a felony. Upon his request, the court assigned me to his case. I contacted the police, secured the files and reviewed the evidence, and then saw Bill.
You've got to do something, Mr. Matthews. You've got to get me out of here.
I'll try.
I've told you I'm innocent. Don't you believe me?
I'd like to believe you,
You
Bill.
think I'm guilty just because one man identified me. Well, that's no proof.
I agree, but when he's backed up by 13 others...
What are you talking about?
You were identified by 14 witnesses.
That's insane. They've made a mistake. I don't know how
All
or why.
14 of them?
Yes, all 14.
Bill, I want to help you, but you've got to tell me the truth. It's our job to defend you. If you're guilty...
But I'm not guilty, I tell you. This whole thing is like a nightmare, and I can't wake up. Won't you help me? Please. You've got to help me.
All right, Bill. We'll talk about it later. Right now, there's somebody who'd like to see you.
Madge, you know me. Tell Mr. Matthews I couldn't do a thing like this.
I never thought you could.
Madge, you don't think...
I don't know what to think. When Mr. Matthews told me you were in debt, I wouldn't believe him. Bill, why did you borrow the money and not tell me?
I didn't want you to worry.
What'd you use it for?
Madge, we've been living beyond our income for months.
But I could have gotten a job. We would have managed.
I didn't want you to work.
I would have rather worked than see you in prison.
Bill, if you did this, I'd advise you to admit it and plead guilty. You'll get a lighter sentence.
Listen to Mr. Matthews, please. He's a fine lawyer. He knows what's best.
Wait a minute. This is ridiculous. How can I make you believe me?
Please, Bill, I want you back home. I can't bear to think of you spending years behind prison bars.
Labeled a crook, a forger, by my wife, my lawyer, and 14 upright citizens. And there's nothing I can do about it. Or is there? What would I get if I pleaded guilty?
Well, with your good record and your reputation, and this being your first offense, you might get off with straight probation.
And if I don't, and they convict me?
Up to 14 years in the state penitentiary.
Mr. Matthews, I want you to enter a plea of not guilty.
Why?
Because I'm not guilty. I'd rather spend 14 years in prison than admit to a crime I didn't commit.
That's good enough for me.
I'm sorry, Bill.
Bill, I want you to know that I'm with you all the way. But it's going to be rough going with all that evidence against you.
Those witnesses were lying.
No, in general, eyewitnesses don't lie. They can be mistaken for many reasons. You know, I've been able to disprove 1 or 2 witnesses before, but never have I had to tackle 14. Well, it won't hurt to try. As I prepared my case, I was well aware that the chances of an acquittal were slim. The best I could do was to prove the defendant's unquestionable honesty and background, line up character witnesses, and re-examine every detail. I also enlisted the services of Don Hamilton, handwriting expert from the police department. My talk with him gave me some hope.
I wish I could be more specific, but I've checked and rechecked these handwriting samples, and the best I can say is there's reasonable doubt.
I see. Look, Don, you and I have worked together many times trying to untangle the maze of circumstantial evidence.
We sure have.
You know how I feel about this case. I'm convinced that my boy is clean. Now, off the record, what do you think?
Unless he's one of the cleverest forgers I've seen, my guess is he's innocent. And I'm perfectly willing to say so in court. But that's an opinion, remember?
Yeah, I know. Admissible as evidence, but qualified as opinion only when the judge instructs the jury.
Bill Evans isn't being tried right at this moment. Between the two of us, we'll turn something up yet.
Like the 14 witnesses who identified my client?
That's incredible.
Well, it's not the first time the wrong man has been pegged. There are dozens of cases where witness after witness got on the stand and swore an innocent man into prison. And in all sincerity.
Yeah.
The next day, I started early, interviewing the 14 witnesses who had identified Evans. Knowing that the underlying motive of a victim's testimony is often the wish to see justice done or to support other identifications, I proceeded with caution. Many were uncooperative, stating that they were witnesses for the prosecution, not the defense. I informed them that under the Constitution, a witness belongs to neither side. He belongs to the case.
I've said all that I have to say to the district attorney.
Here are the reservations for the lunch hour.
Now, if you will explain.
I guess this is your busy hour.
We're always busy. This is the finest restaurant in town.
So I understand.
All of the clubs meet here, and I mean the best ones.
Do they meet here often?
Regularly, once a month.
By the way, did my client ever cash any other checks in here?
No, thank goodness.
But you have seen him in here before.
Certainly not. I've only seen the man twice. The day that he cashed the check in here, and when I identified him at the police station.
Then you're sure you'd remember him if he had been in?
I'm positive. I never forget a face.
Well, we all make mistakes. Look, could it be that my client resembles the real forger and you recognized him because he was a customer here?
Look, I saw the man write that check right here.
You're sure it was Evans, the man you saw in the lineup?
Of course I'm sure. I identified him then, and I will again. And don't forget, I saw him write that check.
Yes?
Miss Biggs to see you, Mr. Matthews.
Who?
Miss Biggs.
Oh, certainly. Send her right in. How do you do, Mrs. Biggs? Won't you sit down?
Miss Biggs, if you don't mind.
I'm sorry to put you to the trouble of coming here, but I missed you several times at your shop, and I did want to see you.
I'm out a great deal. Mr. Matthews, I'm here for one reason only, to do my civic duty.
I appreciate that.
If you are laboring under the delusion that I am going to change my testimony, you're mistaken. The purpose of my visit is to straighten you out.
About what, Miss Biggs?
You are defending a man who is definitely guilty.
But a man is innocent until proven guilty. It's not up to you or me, but to a judge and jury.
I hope they won't be as prejudiced as you.
I'm not defending him, I'm representing him. A privilege given every American citizen.
It's a waste of taxpayers' money, hiring people like you to help the guilty escape punishment.
Miss Biggs, you were very positive in your identification of my client. Do you think you could identify him again?
Oh, what a ridiculous question. Of course.
Very well. Now, which one of these men is William Evans?
That one.
James W. Conroy. Age 32, height 5 feet 10, weight 160 pounds, color white. Now serving sentence at the state penitentiary.
Oh, well, all these pictures confuse me. I tell you, it was Evans I saw in the lineup. And I could tell him again if I'd see him face to face.
The final chapter, The People versus William Evans, began in Superior Court. The prosecution presented a strong case based on circumstantial evidence and the sworn testimony of eyewitnesses. All I had to present was honesty, integrity, and what I believed to be the truth. But I had to find some means of finding a hole in that circumstantial evidence and the sworn testimony of these people. The second day of the trial, after court adjourned, I had a visitor at my office.
Mr. Matthews, we've been in court 2 days now, but I can't tell what's happening. There's so much legal talk, I can't tell.
Well, the first few days are always routine court procedure. Establishment of the crime, introduction of exhibits, witness identification.
I know, but what's going to happen to Bill?
I believe that he's innocent and will be acquitted.
But I don't understand.
Sergeant Riker and our handwriting expert are doing some research for me. In the meantime, I'll attempt to discredit the witnesses. All 14, and that's not going to be easy. Now, isn't it true that when I came to see you at your place of business, you stated that you had never seen the defendant except on the day you received a forged check?
That's right.
And you're absolutely positive that William Evans was the man who gave you that check?
I am.
You also stated that you saw the defendant write that check?
That's correct. I'm positive.
Would you identify him again for the court, please?
That's him right there.
Do you recognize this book?
Certainly. It's from our restaurant. It's our reservation book.
And who makes the entries in this book?
It all depends. Sometimes I do, sometimes the person making the reservation.
The Builders Club meets at your restaurant for their monthly luncheon? Yes? Would you be good enough to find one or two places where the club entered reservations and say who made them?
William Evans. William Evans. He did. Now I remember where I'd seen him before, making these reservations. Well, I guess he didn't write that check after all. It must have been somebody else.
What do you think? But I would have sworn he was a man. Could you believe it? What do you think?
Court recess for lunch. I had made progress, but the case was far from won. Then I received a message to contact Sergeant Riker.
Hi, Riker.
Well, Tim, Bart.
Hello, Ed. Riker picked up a forgery suspect and caught him red-handed. His handwriting tallies identically with the forged checks Evans is on trial for. Name's Gellert. Made a full confession. I'd like to sign you now.
Thanks, Ed. Well, each time I handle a case of mistaken identity, I wonder why I ever became a lawyer. I'll need this man in court. Will you clear it with the chief?
Sure thing.
Thanks. Now, Miss Biggs, you have previously identified William Evans as the man who gave you that check.
That's right. I never forget a face. Never. Not when I can see him face to face.
Will you point him out to the court, please?
He's sitting right there at that table.
Now, Miss Biggs, will you look around the courtroom and tell us if you see any other person who might be the man who gave you that check?
I certainly don't. I tell you, that's the man right there.
If it please the court, I would like permission to ask William Evans and Jack Geller to step up to the bench.
Granted.
Will William Evans and Jack Geller step up to the bench, please? Miss Biggs, look at these two men carefully. Now, are you still sure of your identification?
I could be mistaken.
Your Honor, members of the jury, the man standing next to the defendant is Jack Geller. He has confessed to the charges for which William Evans is on trial. Your Honor, I move for the acquittal of my client.
The defendant is found not guilty, and it is ordered that he be released from custody.
The case of William Evans is an illustration of how human emotions, swayed by a desire for justice, almost wrecked the life of an innocent man. Now, it seems incredible that 14 perfectly honest citizens could have been so sure and so wrong. What you have just seen was brought to a fair and just conclusion through the efforts of a public defender. public defender is an attorney employed by the community and responsible for giving legal aid without cost to any person who seeks it and is financially unable to employ private counsel. It is his duty to defend those accused of crime until the issue is decided in a court of law. The first public defender's office in the United States was opened in January 1913. Over the years, other offices were opened. And today, that handful has grown to a network of lawyers cooperating to protect the rights of our clients.
The district attorney will introduce that as evidence. I had to sign that, Mr. Matthews. Hanson beat me until I did. Look here and here. Hanson's fist did that. He cuffed me all around that room till I couldn't see. I didn't know what I was doing. He wouldn't let me go until I signed it.
Oh, wasn't there another officer present during the questioning?
For a while, then he went out for some coffee. I saw Hanson give that other detective the high sign. He wanted him to leave so he could be alone with me, so he could make me confess.
I'll see what I can do, Ray.
Believe me, Mr. Matthews, I didn't try to steal anything. Get me a trial soon. Let the judge and jury see what Hanson did to me. That confession doesn't mean a thing.
There were several puzzling factors about the Foley case, but my only concern was to defend my client against the charges that were brought against him. Oh, Ed, what's on your mind?
Read my paper today?
Oh, I haven't had time.
Read that building fraud article. We've got those contractors dead to rights.
Yeah, nice work, Ed. I'll have to read it later. I got too much on my mind now.
Like, Ray Foley?
Like Foley and about a dozen others. What's your interest in Foley?
He sneaked this letter out with a prisoner who was released last night. The editor got it this morning. It's big news, Bart. Police brutality has no place on the American scene. The boss wants to splash it front page. Let's work on it together.
I don't like this any more than you do, Ed. If it's true.
It's true, all right. The police department has rights, but they don't include beating confessions out of prisoners. Now, let's cooperate on this, and we can bring that strong-arm stuff right out into the open and have a few guys like Hanson fired off the force.
My job is to defend Foley, not to prosecute a member of the police department for alleged brutality.
Alleged? I just saw that kid. Hanson beat that confession out of him.
Possibly. But it's my client's word against Hanson's.
Don't be naive. Foley isn't the first one to be forced into signing a confession. The DA will dangle it in front of the jury, and that poor kid will be sent to the joint for 10 years.
If Foley is innocent of that shoplifting charge and he was coerced into signing that confession, he'll go free.
How?
By getting the proof.
Well, that's why I'm here, Bart. Now, we can work together on this. The newspaper will give us all the help we need.
I don't like this, Williams. I don't want you to make any unsubstantiated charges. I've always worked with the police department, and I intend to maintain a good relationship. The case you're about to see started out as a 3-line news item on page 16 of the largest newspaper in the city and ended up with headlines on page 1.
Let me go. I didn't do anything.
Sure, just like you didn't do anything a couple of years ago. How about this?
I bought that watch yesterday.
Why aren't you wearing it? It's a wristwatch.
I bought it for a present for a friend.
Come along, Foley. You'll get your chance to tell the
Look,
judge
Hanson,
about it.
please, let me
Go
go. I
on,
didn't do anything.
Get in.
What were you doing at that jewelry counter, Ray?
I was looking at a watch. There was a sale on, and I needed one.
Lieutenant Hanson reports that he saw you pocket a watch.
That's not true. I had enough money to buy one. I was going to buy one. Then I saw Hanson, and I remember what he did to me last time.
What about that signed confession, Ray? Relationship. This would kill it.
A good relationship with a bunch of sadists.
Not a bunch, a few rare exceptions. No, Ed, I'm not going to work with you. I'm not going to let you use the public defender's office to sell your newspapers.
Okay, I'll do it myself. Take a look at the front page tomorrow.
Hold it, Ed. Now, my advice is to be careful. There are laws that protect citizens, even policemen, from slander and libel. Now, this front page could cost your newspaper a lot of money. I understand legal fees come pretty high outside of the public defender's office.
I'll take my chances.
My next move was to investigate Foley's charges of a coerced confession.
That's all. Now, Mr. Matthews. Foley. Here it is. I mugged him at 8:15 that night.
How long did it take?
Oh, just a few minutes.
I had a copy made from the file. This the one you took?
Looks like it.
There were no cuts or lacerations on his face?
Camera doesn't lie. That's the way he looked when he walked in here.
Uh-huh. And where was